The arrival. The Galactic Research Station Zeta-9 hung in the inky void of space, its sleek silver hull reflecting the distant starlight. Inside, a motley crew of alien scientists scurried about, their appendages twitching with nervous energy. Today was no ordinary day at the station. They were about to receive their first human test subject. Dr. Xylax, the lead xenobiologist, adjusted his ocular stalks and addressed his team. Remember, colleagues, this specimen comes from a Deathworld. We must exercise extreme caution. The assembled aliens murmured in agreement, their various respiratory organs working overtime in anticipation. Humans were a relatively new addition to the galactic community, and their reputation preceded them. Stories of their incredible resilience and adaptability had spread across the stars, piquing the curiosity of scientists everywhere. A soft chime echoed through the lab, signaling the arrival of their test subject. The airlock hissed open, revealing a figure that made several of the alien scientists instinctively recoil. The human stood nearly 2 meters tall, towering over most of the assembled xenobiologists. His frame was muscular, honed by evolution on a planet with crushing gravity and harsh conditions. But it was his eyes that truly unnerved them, keen, intelligent, and filled with an unsettling curiosity. "Hi there," the human called out, his voice booming in the silence of the lab. "I'm Jake. I hear you folks are looking for a guinea pig." Dr. Xylax's epidermis rippled in confusion. "Guinea pig? I was under the impression we would be studying the human." Jake laughed, a sound that sent vibrations through the deck plating. "It's just an expression, Doc. Means I'm here to be your test subject." "Ah, yes. Of course." Dr. Xylax gestured towards a nearby examination table. "If you would please take a seat, we can begin our preliminary scans." Jake complied, his massive frame making the reinforced table groan in protest. As the alien scientists began their work, Jake's eyes roamed the lab, taking in the advanced equipment with obvious interest. "So, what kind of tests are we talking about here?" he asked, barely flinching as a device emitting a soft blue light passed over his body. Dr. Xylax's ocular stalks swiveled towards the human. "We will be conducting a series of experiments to measure your physical and cognitive capabilities. Nothing too strenuous, I assure you." Jake grinned, an expression that revealed his unnervingly sharp teeth. "Bring it on, Doc. I'm always up for a challenge." The first test was a simple strength assessment. Dr. Xylax directed Jake to a machine that looked like a cross between a bench press and a quantum computer. "Please exert force on the bar until you reach your maximum output," Dr. Xylax instructed. Jake nodded, gripped the bar, and began to push. The machine's display flickered to life, numbers rapidly climbing. The alien scientists watched in growing amazement as the readout surpassed what they had anticipated as the human's maximum. Alarms began to blare as Jake continued to push, his face reddening with effort. "Is that all you've got?" he grunted, veins bulging in his arms. "Impossible," Dr. Xylax muttered, his ocular stalks quivering. "He's exceeding the machine's rated capacity." With a final surge of effort, Jake let out a roar that made several of the more timid aliens dive for cover. The machine sparked and smoked, then went dark with a pitiful whine. Jake sat up, looking sheepish. "Oh, sorry about that. Did I break it?" Dr. Xylax stared at the smoking remains of the highly advanced and extremely expensive piece of equipment. "It would appear so," he said faintly. As the team of scientists huddled together, speaking in hushed tones and casting nervous glances at their human subject, Jake hopped off the ruined machine. "So, what's next?" he asked brightly, seeming none the worse for wear after his Herculean effort. Dr. Xylax's epidermis cycled through a range of colors before settling on a sickly green. Perhaps we should move on to the cognitive tests," he suggested weakly. Jake's eyes lit up. "Oh, cool. I love brain teasers. Hit me with your best shot." The cognitive assessment chamber was a marvel of galactic engineering. Its walls were lined with holographic projectors capable of creating immersive, multi-dimensional puzzles that would challenge the brightest minds in the galaxy. As Jake stepped into the chamber, Dr. Xylax's voice came through the speakers. "We will start with a simple spatial reasoning test. Please arrange the shape's toe." "Done." Jake's voice interrupted barely seconds later. Dr. Xylax blinked all four of his eyes in rapid succession. I beg your pardon." "I said I'm done," Jake repeated. "What's next?" The alien scientists exchanged baffled looks. Dr. Xylax cleared his throat, or what passed for a throat in his species. "Very well. Let's try something more challenging. This next puzzle typically takes our brightest minds several hours to solve. You will need toe." "Finished," Jake called out cheerfully. Dr. Xylax's ocular stalks drooped in disbelief. That's not possible. You couldn't have." "Want me to explain the solution?" Jake offered. "It's actually pretty simple if you look at it from a non-linear perspective and consider the quantum entanglement properties of the fourth-dimensional constructs." A heavy silence fell over the observation room. Dr. Xylax turned to his colleagues, his voice a hoarse whisper. "I think we may have underestimated our test subject." As the day wore on, Jake continued to shatter every preconception the alien scientists held about human capabilities. He breezed through tests of endurance that would have left most species gasping for breath. He solved complex mathematical equations in his head faster than their computers could process them. He even displayed an uncanny resistance to various environmental stressors that would have incapacitated most known life forms. By the time the initial battery of tests was complete, the team of xenobiologists was in a state of shock. They huddled in the observation room, speaking in hushed, awestruck tones, while Jake waited patiently in the testing chamber, idly juggling some spare equipment components he had found. "This changes everything," Dr. Xylax said, his ocular stalks drooping with the weight of their discoveries. "If this specimen is representative of his species, we may need to reconsider humanity's classification in the Galactic Index." One of his colleagues, a gelatinous being named Dr. Zloob, quivered anxiously. "But what does this mean for the balance of power in the galaxy? If humans are this capable, should we be concerned?" Dr. Xylax was silent for a long moment, watching as Jake effortlessly balanced a piece of highly sensitive and extremely expensive equipment on his nose. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "But I do know one thing. We've only scratched the surface of understanding humanity's potential. And something tells me we're in for many more surprises." As if on cue, Jake's voice came through the speakers. "Hey, docs. I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm getting a bit hungry. You wouldn't happen to have any snacks around here, would you? Maybe something spicy. I'm in the mood for a challenge." Dr. Xylax and his team exchanged worried glances. Somehow, they suspected that satisfying a human's appetite might prove to be their most daunting test yet. Pushing boundaries. As the second day of testing dawned on the Galactic Research Station Zeta-9, the team of alien scientists approached their work with a mixture of trepidation and excitement. Their human test subject, Jake, had consistently defied their expectations, and they were eager to see just how far his capabilities extended. Dr. Xylax gathered his team for a brief meeting before Jake arrived. "Today, we push beyond standard protocols," he announced, his ocular stalks quivering with anticipation. "We must design tests that will truly challenge a Deathworlder's limits." The lab bustled with activity as the xenobiologists prepared a series of increasingly difficult and potentially dangerous experiments. They had spent the night recalibrating their equipment, pushing it to its absolute limits to match the astounding abilities Jake had displayed. When Jake strolled into the lab, looking refreshed and eager, Dr. Xylax couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy. Most species would have been exhausted after yesterday's battery of tests, but the humans seemed ready for more. "Morning, docs," Jake called out cheerfully. "What have you got planned for me today?" Dr. Xylax gestured towards a sealed chamber at the far end of the lab. "We'll be testing your adaptability to extreme environments," he explained. The chamber can simulate a wide range of planetary conditions, from the crushing pressures of gas giants to the vacuum of space. Jake's eyes lit up with excitement. Awesome. I've always wondered what it'd be like to visit other planets. Let's do this. As Jake entered the chamber, the alien scientists gathered around the control panel, ready to start with relatively mild conditions and gradually increase the difficulty. But Jake had other ideas. Hey, why don't we start with something really challenging? His voice came through the speakers. I heard you guys talking about gas giants yesterday. Let's try that. Dr. Xylax's epidermis rippled with concern. Are you certain? The pressures involved air. Bring it on, Doc. Jake interrupted, bouncing on his toes in anticipation. Exchanging nervous glances, the scientists began to adjust the chamber settings. The air inside started to thicken, pressure building to levels that would crush most known life forms. Through the observation window, they watched in amazement as Jake seemed to adapt in real time, his body adjusting to the increasing strain. Hours passed as they subjected Jake to a dizzying array of extreme conditions. From the blistering heat of desert worlds to the frigid cold of ice planets, from high radiation environments to caustic atmospheres, Jake endured it all with a mix of determination and fascination. This is incredible. Jake's voice crackled through the speakers as he basked in the simulated light of a red dwarf star. You guys should really consider packaging this as some kind of extreme tourism experience. I bet lots of humans would pay good money for this. Dr. Xylax made a mental note to never, under any circumstances, allow humans unsupervised access to this technology. As the environmental tests concluded, the scientists moved on to more specialized experiments. They tested Jake's reaction times, pushing them to speeds that blurred the line between conscious thought and instinctive response. They challenged his problem-solving skills with puzzles that incorporated extra-dimensional thinking. They even attempted to map the limits of his sensory perception, only to discover that humans possessed a baffling array of senses they hadn't even considered. Throughout it all, Jake remained enthusiastic and engaged, peppering the scientists with questions about their own species and homeworlds. His curiosity seemed as boundless as his physical capabilities, and the xenobiologists found themselves increasingly drawn into conversations about galactic culture and history. It was during one of these impromptu cultural exchanges that Dr. Zloob made a startling discovery. While discussing the concept of music with Jake, the gelatinous alien had absent-mindedly adjusted his sensory inputs to better perceive the human's vocalizations. Suddenly, he began to vibrate intensely, his entire form rippling with excitement. Dr. Xylax, Zloob burbled urgently. You must analyze the human's subvocal harmonics. There's a complex layer of communication happening beneath his primary vocalizations. Intrigued, Dr. Xylax recalibrated the lab's sensors. What they discovered left the entire team in awe. Beneath Jake's spoken words was a subtle, intricate web of tonal variations, micro-expressions, and physiological changes that conveyed a wealth of additional information. It was a form of communication so nuanced and multi-layered that it bordered on telepathy. Fascinating. Dr. Xylax breathed, his ocular stalks extending to their full length in amazement. It seems humans are constantly communicating on multiple levels, perhaps without even realizing it. This could explain their remarkable ability to form social bonds and cooperate in complex ways. Jake, unaware of the revelation he had inspired, continued chatting amiably about his favorite types of music back on Earth. The scientists listened with newfound appreciation, suddenly aware that they were witnessing a form of communication as beautiful and complex as any symphony. As the day's testing drew to a close, Dr. Xylax found himself reevaluating everything he thought he knew about Deathworlders in general and humans in particular. It was clear that their initial classifications and assumptions had been woefully inadequate. I believe we need to compile a new report for the Galactic Science Council, he announced to his team as they prepared to conclude the day's experiments. Our findings here could revolutionize our understanding of sapient species development. Jake, overhearing this, perked up. "Hey, does that mean I did good?" he asked with a grin. Dr. Xylax's epidermis flushed with a color that, in his species, indicated deep respect. "You have done more than good, Jake. You have opened our eyes to possibilities we never imagined. Your species, humans, you are truly remarkable." Jake's grin widened, but there was a hint of something else in his expression, a flicker of that deeper, more complex communication the scientists had just discovered. It spoke of pride, yes, but also of hope for greater understanding between their species, and a touch of wry amusement at the idea that he, Jake, might be contributing to galactic scientific advancement by simply being himself. "Thanks, Doc," Jake said simply, but the layers of meaning beneath those two words could have filled volumes. As the lab powered down for the night cycle, Dr. Xylax found himself staring out at the stars visible through the station's observation dome. Somewhere out there was Earth, a tiny blue marble that had produced a species capable of reshaping their understanding of the universe. He couldn't help but wonder what other surprises humanity might have in store for the galactic community. One thing was certain: their journey of discovery was far from over. And somehow, Dr. Xylax suspected that this was only the beginning of humanity's impact on the cosmos. Cultural exchange. As the third day of testing began on the Galactic Research Station Zeta-9, an air of excitement permeated the lab. The alien scientists, once apprehensive about their human test subject, now approached Jake with a mixture of awe and curiosity. Their rigorous experiments had evolved into something more akin to a cultural exchange, with both sides eager to learn from each other. Dr. Xylax, his initial scientific detachment giving way to genuine interest, decided to shift the focus of their studies. "Today," he announced to his team, "we will explore the cognitive and cultural aspects of our human guest. We must understand not just his physical capabilities, but the mind and society that shaped him." Jake, always eager for new experiences, grinned widely at this news. "Sounds great, Doc. I've been dying to learn more about you guys too. How about we make this a two-way street?" And so began a day of unprecedented interspecies dialogue. The lab, usually sterile and formal, transformed into a lively forum of cultural exchange. Holographic displays flickered to life, showcasing images of Earth's diverse ecosystems, cities, and peoples. In return, the alien scientists shared visuals of their own homeworlds, each unique and wondrous in its own right. As Jake explained human concepts and customs, the xenobiologists found themselves alternately fascinated and baffled. The idea of pets, for instance, sparked a heated debate among the aliens. "You mean to say, Dr. Zlub?" As Jake explained human concepts and customs, the xenobiologists found themselves alternately fascinated and baffled. The idea of pets, for instance, sparked a heated debate among the aliens. "You mean to say," Dr. Zlub burbled incredulously, his gelatinous form quivering with excitement, "that humans voluntarily share their living spaces with other non-sapient species for companionship?" Jake nodded, a fond smile on his face. "Yep. Dogs, cats, birds, fish, you name it. Some people even keep reptiles or exotic insects as pets." Dr. Xylax's ocular stalks twisted in confusion. "But what purpose do these creatures serve? Surely they are not merely for aesthetic appreciation." "Well, sometimes they are," Jake admitted. "But mostly, it's about the bond we form with them. They become part of our families. There's something special about caring for another living being, even if they can't talk back to us." The aliens exchanged puzzled looks, struggling to grasp this concept. In their cultures, interspecies relationships were primarily utilitarian or scientific in nature. The idea of forming emotional bonds with non-sapient creatures was entirely foreign to them. As the day progressed, the cultural exchange deepened. Jake regaled the scientists with tales of human history, art, and philosophy. He explained concepts like music and dance, even attempting to teach Dr. Zlu a simple Earth dance called the robot. An endeavor that led to much amusement and a small mess to clean up. In return, the aliens shared aspects of their own cultures. Dr. Xylax demonstrated a traditional greeting ritual from his homeworld, a complex series of tentacle movements that left Jake cross-eyed but grinning. Another scientist, a crystalline being named Crix, attempted to explain their species' form of art, intricate patterns of resonant frequencies that could only be fully appreciated by beings with non-organic sensory organs. As they delved into more complex topics, Jake found himself increasingly impressed by the depth and diversity of galactic culture. He learned about interstellar politics, the workings of the Galactic Science Council, and the ongoing debates about the integration of young species, like humanity, into the broader cosmic community. "It's kind of overwhelming," Jake admitted during a break in the discussions. "I mean, back on Earth, we're still arguing about whether we're alone in the universe. And here I am, chatting with beings from a dozen different worlds like it's no big deal." Dr. Xylax's epidermis rippled in a pattern that Jake had come to recognize as sympathy. "It is a significant adjustment for any species when they first join the galactic community," the alien scientist said. "But from what we have seen of you, Jake, I believe humans will adapt remarkably well." As the exchange continued, the scientists began to notice something extraordinary. Jake's questions and responses were becoming increasingly nuanced and insightful. He was picking up on subtle cues in alien body language that even seasoned cynobiologists sometimes missed. His ability to grasp complex interstellar concepts was accelerating at an astounding rate. Dr. Zloob was the first to vocalize what they were all thinking. "It's as if he's evolving before our eyes," the gelatinous alien burbled in awe. "His neural plasticity is off the charts." Dr. Xylax nodded, his ocular stalks quivering with excitement. "It appears that humans don't just adapt physically to new environments. Their minds are equally flexible, capable of rapidly assimilating and processing new information." Jake, overhearing this, looked slightly embarrassed. "I've always been a quick study," he said with a shrug. "But this is something else. It's like my brain is on fire in the best possible way. Every new thing I learn makes it easier to understand 10 more." As the day wore on, the lines between test subject and researcher began to blur. Jake was no longer simply answering questions. He was asking them, proposing theories, and even suggesting new avenues of research that the alien scientists hadn't considered. "What if we combine the resonant art forms of Crix's people with human music?" Jake mused at one point. "Could we create a new form of expression that bridges the gap between organic and non-organic sensory experiences?" The idea set off a flurry of excited discussion among the scientists. Before long, they were sketching out plans for a collaborative art project that would push the boundaries of interspecies creativity. As the station's day cycle drew to a close, Dr. Xylax found himself marveling at how much had changed in just 3 days. What had begun as a straightforward series of tests on a Deathworlder's physical capabilities had evolved into a profound exchange of ideas and culture. "I believe," Dr. Xylax announced to his team, "that we must reconsider the very nature of our research here. We came seeking to understand human limitations, but instead, we have discovered that their greatest strength may lie in their limitless potential for growth and adaptation." Jake, hearing this, smiled warmly. "Thanks, Doc. But I think the same could be said for all of you. This exchange has been a two-way street. We've all grown from this experience." As the team prepared to wind down for the night, there was a palpable sense of excitement in the air. They had embarked on this project expecting to study a subject, but instead they had gained a colleague, a friend, and a window into a species that continually defied expectations. Little did they know that their newfound understanding and camaraderie would soon be put to the ultimate test, as an unforeseen crisis loomed on the horizon, one that would challenge everything they thought they knew about humans, aliens, and the very nature of cooperation in the face of adversity. Crisis and cooperation. The 4th day aboard the Galactic Research Station Zeta-9 began like any other, with the hum of advanced machinery and the excited chatter of alien scientists. Jake, now as much a part of the research team as a test subject, was engaged in a lively debate with Dr. Xylax about the potential applications of human adaptability in interstellar colonization efforts. Suddenly, a shrill alarm cut through the air, causing several of the more sensitive alien species to recoil in pain. Red warning lights began to pulse throughout the station, casting an eerie glow over the startled faces of the research team. "What's happening?" Jake shouted over the din, instinctively moving to shield some of the smaller alien scientists from potential danger. Dr. Xylax's ocular stalks whirled in alarm as he interfaced with the station's central computer. "It's the station's orbit," he announced, his voice tinged with fear. "We're caught in a gravitational anomaly. Our stabilizers are failing, and we're being pulled towards the nearby gas giant." Panic began to spread among the alien scientists. Their specialized knowledge, so useful in the controlled environment of the lab, seemed woefully inadequate in the face of this crisis. Some froze in terror, while others darted about aimlessly, unsure of how to help. Jake, however, remained calm. His eyes narrowed as he quickly assessed the situation. "Okay, we need to focus," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos with surprising authority. "Dr. Xylax, what are our options?" The lead scientist's epidermis had turned a sickly pale color, but he managed to respond. "The emergency thrusters could potentially break us free, but they're located on the outer hull. Someone would need to go outside to manually realign them. And in this gravitational flux, it would be extremely dangerous." Jake nodded grimly. "I'll do it." A chorus of protests erupted from the alien scientists. "But the radiation levels out there are lethal," Dr. Zloob burbled anxiously, "and the gravitational forces could tear you apart." Jake flashed a confident grin. "Hey, I'm a Deathworlder, remember? This is what we're built for. Besides, we don't have much choice, do we?" Dr. Xylax hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "You're right. It's our only chance, but you'll need help coordinating from inside the station." What followed was a flurry of activity as the team rallied around Jake's plan. The human donned a reinforced spacesuit, modified on the fly to offer extra protection against the extreme conditions he would face. Dr. Xylax and a team of the station's best engineers huddled around the control panels, ready to guide Jake through the complex process of realigning the thrusters. As Jake stepped into the airlock, Dr. Zloob approached him, quivering with a mix of fear and admiration. "Good luck, Jake," the gelatinous alien said softly. "And thank you." Jake nodded, his face set with determination. "See you soon, buddy. Have a cold one ready for me when I get back, yeah." With that, the airlock cycled, and Jake was exposed to the unforgiving vacuum of space. The gravitational anomaly immediately made its presence known, tugging at him with terrifying force. Using all of his strength and agility, Jake maneuvered along the station's hull, fighting against forces that would have pulverized most known life forms. Inside the station, the alien scientists watched in awe as Jake's vital signs remained stable despite the extreme conditions. His heart rate was elevated but steady, his muscles working at peak efficiency as he adapted in real time to the challenging environment. "Remarkable," Dr. Xylax murmured, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his fear. "He's not just surviving out there, he's thriving." Jake's voice crackled over the comm system, strained but determined. "All right, I've reached the first thruster. Talk me through the realignment process, Doc." What followed was an intricate dance of human ingenuity and alien technology. Jake's hands, guided by Dr. Xylax's instructions and his own intuitive understanding of mechanical systems, worked swiftly to adjust the complex machinery. As he moved from thruster to thruster, the station's orbit began to stabilize, but the danger was far from over. "Jake, we have a problem." Dr. Xylax's voice came through, tense with worry. "The final thruster's control panel has been damaged by debris. The manual override is jammed." For a moment, silence filled the comm channel. Then, Jake's voice returned, filled with grim determination. "All right, I'm going to have to improvise. Zloob, remember the conversation we had about human tool use and problem solving?" The gelatinous alien burbled an affirmative, confusion evident in his tone. "Well, you're about to see a prime example," Jake said. "I'm going to need you to talk me through the thruster's internal layout. I'm going to bypass the control panel entirely." What followed was a masterclass in human adaptability and creative problem-solving. Using nothing but the tools at hand and his own ingenuity, Jake essentially rewired the thruster on the fly. He jury-rigged connections, repurposed components in ways their designers had never intended, and at one point even used his own body heat to. What followed was a masterclass in human adaptability and creative problem-solving. Using nothing but the tools at hand and his own ingenuity, Jake essentially rewired the thruster on the fly. He jury-rigged connections, repurposed components in ways their designers had never intended, and at one point even used his own body heat to thaw a frozen valve. Inside the station, the alien scientists watched in awe as Jake's vital signs fluctuated wildly. His heart rate spiked, his adrenaline levels soared, and his brain activity lit up like a supernova. Yet through it all, he remained focused, his hands steady as he worked against time and the relentless pull of the gas giant. "Almost. Got it." Jake's strained voice came through the comm. "Zloob, I need you to run power to section G7 on my mark. Dr. Xylax, be ready to fire all thrusters at 100% capacity." The tension in the control room was palpable as everyone waited for Jake's signal. Seconds stretched into eternity as the station continued its inexorable drift towards destruction. "Now," Jake shouted. Zloob's appendages flew over the controls, redirecting power as instructed. Dr. Xylax, his ocular stalks fixed on the main view screen, slammed his tentacle down on the thruster controls. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a violent lurch, the station began to move. Slowly at first, then with increasing speed, it broke free of the gravitational anomaly's pull. Cheers erupted throughout the station as the immediate danger passed, but the celebration was short-lived as they realized Jake was no longer responding to their hails. "Jake? Jake, can you hear us?" Dr. Xylax called urgently into the comm. Silence. "We need to get him inside now." Dr. Zloob burbled frantically. "His life signs are weakening." A rescue team was quickly assembled, a mix of the station's most durable species. They ventured out into the still turbulent space around the station, searching desperately for their human friend. They found Jake drifting near the final thruster, his spacesuit showing signs of extreme stress. Working quickly, they brought him back inside the station. As soon as Jake was in the medbay, the alien scientists swarmed around him, their diverse knowledge and technologies all focused on saving the life of the human who had saved them all. Hours passed in tense silence. Species that had once viewed humans as mere test subjects now worked tirelessly to keep this one alive, their efforts a testament to how much had changed in just a few short days. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Jake's eyes fluttered open. He looked around the medbay, taking in the worried faces of his alien friends, and managed a weak grin. "Did we do it?" he asked, his voice hoarse, but filled with hope. Dr. Xylax's epidermis flushed with relief and joy. "Yes, Jake. We did it. Thanks to you. We're all safe." Jake's grin widened. "Told you Deathworlders come in handy sometimes." The room filled with laughter, some melodious, some gurgling, some resembling crystalline chimes, but all united in relief and gratitude. As Jake recovered, the mood on the station shifted dramatically. The aliens no longer viewed him as a test subject, or even merely a colleague. He had become a hero, a friend, and a living embodiment of humanity's potential. Dr. Xylax called a meeting of all the scientists once Jake was well enough to attend. The human entered the room to a round of alien applause, each species expressing their appreciation in their own unique way. "Jake," Dr. Xylax began, his voice solemn but warm, Your actions during our crisis have forced us to reevaluate everything we thought we knew about humans and Deathworlders in general. Your physical resilience is remarkable, yes, but it's your adaptability, your problem-solving skills, and your willingness to risk everything for others that truly sets your species apart. Jake looked embarrassed but pleased. I just did what anyone would do, he said modestly. Dr. Zloob burbled excitedly. But that's just it. We've realized that what's ordinary for humans is extraordinary for much of the galaxy. Your species routinely does the impossible, simply because you don't know it's supposed to be impossible. Indeed, Dr. Xylax continued, we began this project seeking to understand human limitations. Instead, we've discovered that your greatest strength lies in your ability to overcome limitations, not just your own, but those imposed by nature itself. The implications of this realization began to sink in for everyone in the room. Humanity, this young species from a harsh, unforgiving world, might just be the key to pushing the boundaries of what was possible for all galactic civilization. So, Jake said, a mischievous glint in his eye, does this mean the tests are over? Because I got to say, nearly getting crushed by a gas giant wasn't exactly in the brochure. The room filled with laughter again, but there was a newfound respect underlying the mirth. The aliens had glimpsed the true potential of humanity, and they knew that the galaxy would never be the same. As the laughter died down, Dr. Xylax raised one of his tentacles for silence. Actually, Jake, he said, his tone serious, but his ocular stalks twinkling with excitement, I believe this is just the beginning. We have a proposal for you, one that could change the future of interspecies cooperation and galactic exploration. Jake leaned forward, intrigued. I'm listening, Doc. And so, as the Galactic Research Station Zeta-9 continued its journey through the cosmos, a new chapter began, not just for Jake or the alien scientists, but for the entire galactic community. The age of human integration into the cosmic tapestry had truly begun, promising a future filled with challenges, discoveries, and possibilities beyond imagination. A new perspective. In the weeks following the near-catastrophic incident, the Galactic Research Station Zeta-9 buzzed with an energy unlike anything it had experienced before. The narrow escape from destruction, made possible by Jake's heroic actions, had catalyzed a profound shift in the station's dynamics and purpose. Dr. Xylax stood before the assembled team of scientists, his ocular stalks surveying the diverse group of beings that now included Jake as a full-fledged member rather than a test subject. The room hummed with anticipation as everyone waited to hear the details of the proposal hinted at earlier. Colleagues, Dr. Xylax began, his voice resonating with a mix of excitement and solemnity. The events of the past weeks have forced us to confront a fundamental truth. Our understanding of galactic species, particularly those from Deathworlds like Earth, has been woefully inadequate. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Jake, sitting near the front, listened intently, his eyes bright with curiosity. We embarked on this project seeking to quantify and categorize human capabilities, Dr. Xylax continued. Instead, we have discovered that the true strength of humanity, and perhaps all Deathworld species, lies not in measurable physical attributes, but in their remarkable adaptability, creativity, and spirit. Dr. Zloob burbled enthusiastically from his containment pod. Indeed, Jake's actions during the crisis demonstrated problem-solving skills and innovative thinking that none of our predictive models could have anticipated. Dr. Xylax nodded, his epidermis rippling with colors that indicated deep appreciation. Precisely. And it is this realization that has led us to propose a radical shift in our research focus. The lead scientist paused, his gaze sweeping across the room before settling on Jake. We propose the establishment of a new division within the Galactic Science Council, the Department of Cooperative Synovolution and Adaptive Technologies, or CXAT for short. Excited whispers broke out among the assembled scientists. Jake leaned forward, his brow furrowed in concentration. The purpose of this department, Dr. Xylax explained, will be to study and harness the unique adaptive capabilities of various species, with a particular focus on those from extreme environments like Earth. But more than that, it will be a collaborative effort to push the boundaries of what we believe possible. Jake raised his hand, a gesture that still amused some of the alien scientists. So, you're talking about some kind of interspecies think tank? Dr. Xylax's ocular stalks quivered in what Jake had come to recognize as the alien equivalent of a smile. In essence, yes, but it goes beyond mere theoretical work. We envision CXAT as a crucible for innovation, where the diverse strengths of different species can be combined to solve the greatest challenges facing our galactic community. The excitement in the room was palpable now. Scientists of various species began to chatter amongst themselves, their minds already racing with the possibilities. Imagine, Dr. Xylax continued, raising his voice slightly to be heard over the growing excitement, combining the problem-solving skills of humans with the quantum computational abilities of the Xynthrak, or merging the environmental adaptability of Earth's extremophiles with the energy manipulation capabilities of the Zorlak. Jake's eyes widened as he grasped the full implications of what Dr. Xylax was proposing. You're not just talking about studying different species anymore, he said slowly. You're talking about actively combining our strengths to push beyond our individual limitations. Exactly, Dr. Zlub exclaimed, his gelatinous form rippling with enthusiasm. The possibilities are endless. We could develop technologies to terraform hostile planets, create new forms of faster-than-light travel, even find ways to communicate with non-corporeal entities. Dr. Xylax raised a tentacle for calm, as the room erupted into excited discussions. This is more than just a scientific endeavor, he said, his tone becoming serious. It represents a fundamental shift in how we, as a galactic community, view ourselves and our place in the cosmos. He turned to Jake, his ocular stalks focusing intently on the human. Jake, your presence here has been the catalyst for this change. You have shown us that the greatest advances come not from isolation and study, but from cooperation and mutual understanding. We would be honored if you would consider becoming the first human representative in the CXAT initiative. Jake sat in stunned silence for a moment, the weight of the offer sinking in. He thought back to his arrival on the station, how he had been viewed as little more than a curious specimen from a backward world. Now he was being offered a chance to help shape the future of galactic science and cooperation. I don't know what to say, Jake finally managed, his voice thick with emotion. This is way beyond anything I ever imagined when I signed up for these tests. Dr. Xylax's epidermis rippled with understanding. Take some time to consider the offer, Jake. This is not a decision to be made lightly. It would mean committing to a life among the stars, helping to bridge the gap between humanity and the wider galactic community. Jake nodded, his mind already racing with the possibilities. He thought of Earth, of the dreams of space exploration that had captivated humanity for centuries. And now, here he was, on the cusp of helping to make those dreams a reality on a scale beyond anything his ancestors could have imagined. As the meeting adjourned and the scientists broke into excited discussion groups, Jake found himself drifting towards the station's observation deck. He stood before the vast window, gazing out at the star-studded expanse of space. Somewhere out there was Earth, a tiny blue marble that had produced a species capable of adapting to virtually any challenge the universe could throw at them. He felt a presence beside him and turned to see Dr. Xylax, the alien scientist's ocular stalks, also focused on the cosmic panorama before them. It's a big decision, Dr. Xylax said softly, to be a bridge between worlds, to help shape the future of not just your species, but potentially all sapient life in the galaxy. Jake nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. You know, back on Earth, we have this saying, to boldly go where no one has gone before. It's from an old science fiction show, but it's always captured the human spirit of exploration and discovery. Dr. Xylax's epidermis rippled with curiosity. And is that what you want, Jake? to boldly go. Jake turned to face the alien scientist, his eyes shining with determination and excitement. "You know what, Doc? I think it is. Count me in." As Jake shook hands, or tentacles, with Dr. Xylax, sealing his commitment to the CXAT initiative, neither of them could fully grasp the magnitude of the journey they were about to embark upon. But they both knew one thing for certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. And so, as the Galactic Research Station Zeta-9 continued its eternal dance among the stars, it carried with it the seeds of a new era of interspecies cooperation and discovery. The project that had begun as a simple series of tests on a Deathworlder's capabilities had evolved into something far greater, a bold new chapter in the story of galactic civilization, with humanity playing a central role. The reasons why galactic scientists no longer tested Deathworlders were clear. They had found something far more valuable than mere data or classifications. They had found partners, innovators, and friends. And together, they would face the challenges of the cosmos not as separate species, but as a united front, each bringing their unique strengths to bear in the greatest adventure of all: the exploration and understanding of the universe itself. As Jake took one last look at the starfield before him, he couldn't help but smile. The journey ahead would be challenging, filled with unknown dangers and unimaginable wonders. But then again, as a human from Earth, the Deathworld that had shaped his species into the adaptable, resilient, and endlessly curious beings they were, he wouldn't have it any other way. The future, vast and unknown, beckoned, and humanity, hand in hand with their new alien allies, was ready to answer its call.